late 70s and 80s, I had already read Professor Arnold Ehret's Diet, you know, his book, and I was going to work and had started at the post office, and I was doing 11.5 hours, 12-hour days. So my thing was, I was, you know, juicing at that time as well, and I was taking enemas every day, you know, and I had sisters that didn't think I was doing the right thing. But I had to do a lot of hours at the post office, and at that time I had 3 children. Wow. So it was working for me. So I'd take my enema, give me some carrot juice, and go to work. And you know, and they wasn't one that want to let you go home early unless you got a physical problem. So I was saying, oh, my skin's itching, I got to go home. And that couldn't work every day, you know, because somebody else may have wanted to go home. And so then I was doing Sabrina's thing later on in life. I joined up with Sabrina, and she had a different type of cleanse and stuff, and I was taking colonics. And then it just so happened I was having foot problems, you know, and Howard Hakeem had introduced me to Brother Spira here, Professor Spira. So when he was telling me about the book, you know, Professor Arnold Ehret, you know, I was onto it. So the enemas wasn't nothing different, you know, but what came with his was lemon juice. So I said, wow, this is working here. So I squeezed the lemon in the morning, you know, because my shift has changed now. I was graveyard back in the 80s, you know, and I worked that shift for 28 years. So now I'm on day shift, and I've been doing that for about 10 years. So now I see, wow, I'm working with this guy, such an amazing guy, because, you know, as I done it, the lemon juice enemas, then he says start using the rhyme, you know, juice it up in your juicer and use it in the, use the rhyme as well. And so working with him for the last 6 to 8 months, I have lost 30 pounds. Wow. But my thing is, it was hard for me, and I haven't yet really put in the exercise because my foot was really bothering me, you know, and you go to the doctor and you're like, oh, well, you take these Motrin here. Well, I'm not a Motrin person, but I go ahead and get them, you know, and just put them up in the cabinet. But yes, working with him, I felt better. But then I have these trigger points. See, so I speak to him on a weekly basis. And my trigger points is really my family. You know, I have one daughter that she does her diet differently. But then, oh, well, Mom, can you stop and give me some ice cream? You know, and not understanding, I'm trying to live. You know, and I got my sister with that Southern hospitality. Oh, Lily, do you want to eat? You know, I'm taking her a book or something. Oh, Lily, do you want some dinner? Oh, do you want some Chinese food? So I have those trigger points, you know, but, you know, maybe in a month or two, if I retire, I can really follow him, because he's like a blessing that has came into my life, and I really need to do this because I have 5 children, and I need to switch them around from what they're doing, and they really need to see, you know, whereas, you know, my son in Las Vegas, he came out, my son in Texas, and my granddaughter came out for Mother's Day. Well, I got the daughters here. Okay, we're going to have fats. Chinese foods, you know, like, so my kids, all my children are here, you know, for Mother's Day, so it's like, oh, you guys don't realize, you know, I don't have to really eat this stuff. But, you know, how can you let them down? They travel so far, you know, to come and see you, you know. So, yeah, I do have trigger points, but I do slip, I do have a relapse. But he's always there, you know, if I have a problem, he always makes it so much easier to go through, you know. It's such a blessing for him to come back and come into my life. You know, so the problems with the enemas, I've started that with parents back in the day. My mother used to give us enemas, so it was no problem with me taking enemas back in the 70s and 78, giving it to myself. And right now, he's added lemon juice to it, so it's really truly a blessing for him to come into my life, and I thank you.
Mine, and so a lot of people have kind of said, well, this is sort of the one that you want, the annotated version. Any other
so we'll let Brother Spira keep going for another 15 minutes. Anybody got any questions?
Yeah, maybe this could be the question and answer session. We kind of get into that. Okay, Bo, you.
So for the enemas, we have to use distilled water. We can't use reverse osmosis. Is that just?
Yeah, we're not fans of the reverse osmosis. I mean, we distilled is kind of just where we're at. You know, I know. Yeah, that there was yesterday we got into there's the water debates, you know, it's like a big deal, but for us, we're just in the distilled water camp.
What about all the superfoods? maca and goji and chia and hemp seed and bee pollen and all that stuff.
And you would have to look at those on an individual basis. A lot of that stuff we don't use because we have a very different take on the nutrition concept. Like, we don't really get into that. So we don't get into counting calories or looking at vitamins and minerals and stuff. We are looking at food as a tool for elimination, to aid the body in elimination. So a lot of those foods, I would ask the question, like, okay, if I eat this or take it, will it help my body eliminate waste? And if it doesn't, if the intention is more from like a nutritional thing, then we would just not really use something like that.
Professor, can you go over that slide there? I can't quite see it. When you said eat 2 meals a day, I mean, what's the recommendation?
Let's see, yeah, eat 2 meals a day. Overall, no more than 2 meals a day should be eaten, even though the quantity eaten might be as much as 3 or even 4 meals. Some exceptions apply. I actually added that today because there are exceptions. You might go through a period where maybe you do want, you kind of need more than 2 meals. You know, if you're more advanced, someplace else in the book, Aaron says, you can have a fruit meal kind of at a breakfast if you want to add something in, and so you might have a fruit meal, another fruit meal in the afternoon, and then the vegetables at night. So the one thing about the Mucusless diet is that it is changeable. You know, once you understand the principles, it's fairly you know, lucid in terms of being able to kind of go back and forth and do different things. And experiment with different things. Down there it says, if possible, the first meal should be eaten between 10 and 11 in the morning. Like today, before, yeah, around 11 o'clock, I had a couple bananas. That was my little vegetable or my fruit meal. Evening meal should not be eaten sooner than 5 or 6 in the afternoon. So the later, the better. Obviously, not real super late right before you go to bed, but you know, it's good to kind of have that length of time between your lunch meal. Sort of have that length of time. Have your evening meal. In between, drink juices. You can juice, fruit juice, vegetable juice. You can drink some water, lemon water, whatever within there.
Is there a best time for the enema? First thing in the morning, last thing at night?
It's preference, and that can change depending on what you're going through. Some people prefer it in the morning. Some people do it at night, depending on where you're at. Some people do it twice a day. They'll do it they'll do it in the morning, and then if there's a bunch of waste that they can feel in their system, they might do it again in the evening. Or if they're fasting, you always want to do enemas when you're fasting, even if you aren't real strict with it when you're in your eating mode. When you're fasting, you definitely want to be doing them every day because you got to move those poisons out. When the fasting and that's a subject I didn't even get a chance to talk about from yesterday to today, because that would have took a whole other kind of 4 hours to talk about fasting, because that in itself is super deep. I kind of focus on transition diet, but when you fast, your body starts to really squeeze out the toxins and the poisons, and you need to, because you're not eating food to help push it along. The enema can kind of help if there's the stuff that starts collecting down in the colon. You don't want that stuff just sitting there, poisoning your body. You want to get it out. So that's why that's important.
I plan to do your fast, so I plan to get with you, do a nice cleanse fast and whole thing. But I want to ask you about herbs like marshmallow root, echinacea, mullet. I got a herbal formula I made, mucus-free herbal formula, and I said I need to incorporate the diet with it. It don't make sense to take herbs by itself and tell people don't eat dairy, because people don't eat dairy. Yeah. And so, do you recommend? Do you recommend taking herbs while you're on your mucus-free diet?
So where we are with the herbs, I only usually talk about the herbs in consultation settings with kind of one-on-one, because each person's real specific. So some people kind of give a lot of general information about herbs. I only suggest herbs when I think it's really necessary, and we go through protocols, and you know, there's some people here that I've worked with that have, you know, went through different protocols and stuff, and so I brought the herbs in, and they're usually in formula format. One thing Brother Air says is, if you got herbs, just eat them with your salad. You know, just if it's sort of an edible, unless it's like bark or something that you can't chew on. But anything that is edible, just throw it in a salad and eat it. And you know, you go out back and you pull some poke root or whatever you got growing in your house or in the back. You know, just eat it, because that you're going to get that. Because really, with the herbs, well, we look at that as tools of elimination. And there's certain things, like for instance, to try to get in, this is something I wanted to think about, because I never heard people really break down sort of like a philosophical science of how the herbs work. But when I think of what happens when you use like a horseradish root, if you take a piece and you chew it and you keep your mouth closed, your ears will catch on fire, your whole face will get hot. There's a chemical change is happening, enzymes, like that kind of thing. So there's a chemical thing that happens, and then so different herbs have different chemistry, different properties, and so you get the benefit of that. But of course, there's a lot of people that talk about that. I kind of focus on transition diet because people don't focus on it enough. What happens is people, because we've been conditioned to take medicine, people want to treat herbs like it's medicine, and so they kind of get this, like it's this heal-all, or it's this thing that's, oh, this is really what's important. It's safe. It's like, no, when I work with somebody, I transition somebody at least 2 or 3 weeks before we get into herbs, and I like to see people do a fast without the herbs, first, so you get that in your system of that habit of, okay, like, because you can do all of this without the herbs, and so and then Brother Air, he started off, he had studied a lot of that, and then he kind of went to a space where he just kind of doesn't use any of that at all. Like he totally focuses on just the diet, just fasting, because fasting is really the power. That's where the power really is.
Do you recommend fasting before transition for somebody who's like 70 years old and been eating meat and regular food all their life?
I would have them eat transitional meals, mucus lean a little bit, unless they have like chronic illness, and then we'd have to have a different discussion. But if it's just kind of, okay, I just want to eat better, start the transition, I would wait a couple weeks before doing like a 24-hour fast, and then go through those fasting chapters and lessons in the Mucusless diet, kind of read through it, and there's step-by-step methods and the ideas and the rules of fasting. Yeah, so you want to clean yourself up for a couple weeks and then do like a 24-hour fast. And we recommend juice fasting a lot. There's all these different, that's like I said, a whole other subject where you talk about water fasting. Some people promote, there's just all these different things. Eric's primary fasting drink is some kind of fruit juice, so fresh juice is great. Honey lemon water was another option that kind of started with him, and then other people like the master fast and that kind of stuff sort of is like a watered down version of some stuff that Eric was talking about to a certain extent. But so that's give it a couple weeks, start your transition, and then get into like a 24-hour.
Thank you.
Have you tried, or what are your thoughts on hydrogen peroxide?
Yeah, I wouldn't do it. Yeah, I wouldn't do it internally. Using the hydrogen peroxide. We like to try to keep things away from the different kind of anything that's like kind of a chemical thing or something that you would buy in a bottle. Because I tell people, because some people's like they're like, hey, I got this lemon juice in a bottle. I'm like, no, put that away. You don't want to use that. Use fresh lemons. Don't use nothing in this bottle. Not for that. Yeah, so I wouldn't do it. I know there's some people talk about that, but yeah, I wouldn't do it.
How much lemon juice were you using with it? How much lemon juice?
So if you're using a centrifuge juicer and you're going to do the rind and all, I would start off with just 1 lemon, because that's really potent. If you're just using a citrus juicer, I would say start off with 2 to 3 lemons with the first one, and then you can always increase or decrease depending on how it felt. You know, if it felt like, wow, that was a little too much, you can decrease in lemons. If you want to, you know, get a little bit more cleansing going, you can increase it.
All right, so based on the air engine, so when people seem to have starved to death, is it really that they're eliminating?
I couldn't hear her.
Okay, yeah, let's have a conversation.
Yeah, I can't hear her question.
Okay.
Who's talking?
Oh, yeah, I'm sorry.
Who's talking?
Yeah,
Thank you.
It's Bo Yi. So my question is, it's kind of a maybe controversial one, but based on the air gas engine theory, when people seemingly have starved to death, is it because they have actually eliminated too quickly?
Yes.
Okay.
What Eric says is they've drowned in their own waste.
All right.
So they've released so much. If you're someone that's very encumbered, and then you go periods where you don't eat, and in the case where people starve,
yes,
it's that they're starved of oxygen because there's so much waste that has been released into their system and their bloodstream. Now their blood can't get oxygen, and then as soon as your blood can't get oxygen, that's what curiously has the word EAT in it. Death has the word EAT in it. So we're letting you know what the deal is there.
A comment and a question. She brings up a good point. If you've not done something like this, the off and on fasting, because that's what this is about, fasting off and on, and then it's good to have a coach. I was a practitioner, but I had never done this before. So I've even learned a lot from doing this, and the coaching helped me because I had detox symptoms I had never had before, healing crisis. So Spira sends DVD, so I don't panic. It's like, yeah, here's a DVD on that, your scalp's itching and peeling massively.
Wow.
Even one day I couldn't even see. I went pretty much blind. I was like, I was so depressed. So in the middle of the night I emailed him. I said, okay, I know he's going to happen. And sure enough, it spoke about how that can happen. So it's just good to have that coaching. And somebody told me that when you're fasting, off and on, okay? The other thing, I just wanted you to clarify, or if you need to elaborate on, some people have said to me and others, well, you're not getting enough nutrients. You can't get enough nutrients from the food, blah, blah, blah. And I'm glad you clarified that the food is mainly to eliminate, for elimination purposes. Are you saying, so what you're saying, because you asked about the superfoods and different nutrients that people claim you need for healing purposes. Are you saying basically, and is Eric's book saying basically that it's not the nutrients that heal you, it's the clearing out of waste.
Exactly.
Clearing out of obstruction.
Right. The body heals itself. So there's no herb you can take, there's nothing you can drink, no enemy you can do that will actually perform the healing. Those are tools that help eliminate obstruction, and your body heals itself when you give it a chance to. When there's no obstruction in the way, your body will start to put itself back together.
So we're actually eating to feed our body what it needs, and then eliminating what we don't need?
Well, a lot of us in the Mucusless diet community would say we're not eating for what we need. We need to eat because we're filthy. Because the primary need for eating is for elimination.
To push waste out.
Yeah, to push waste out. So, Eric and we do not really subscribe to a lot of Western dietetic theories. Yeah, and we talked a little bit yesterday about the history of something like the protein theory. A lot of people don't know the history of where it came about, the history of the vitamin theory. And when you start to delve into some of these histories, you see that a lot of the assumptions that they use these early tests are very fallacious. And so if you go back and you look at, like, well, you know, how the words were created, all that, checking out the etymology, you know, kind of excavating the origins of these concepts. When you start to do that, you can decide for yourself if it makes any sense at all. We're not taught to do that. We're taught that, oh, well, this milk commercial said that milk does a body good and I got to get my calcium, or, you know, this study that was in People magazine that's like, you know, whatever, they said that I'm supposed to eat more of this and all that kind of stuff. The word superfood was invented as a marketing tool to try and push certain kinds of foods, you know, within a certain kind of context. And so, you know, so that's kind of what we're dealing with. What we've done is we've stepped away from all that and said, well, let's just look at the body and let's kind of go all the way back to the beginning and kind of almost start over again in terms of the way that we think about the body, as opposed to trying to adapt a theoretical framework that was based on pus and mucus eating, that assumed that pus and mucus eating was the way we're supposed to live. If we just kind of scrap it all together and say, okay, we're going to start over again. And so then this is one of the things a lot of people have trouble because they've invested so much time into these nutrition theories, you know, and into that. I'm working with one person who is has a degree, I think it's a master's degree in nutrition. She became a nutritionist, but then she kind of came across the Mucusless diet and me. Now she's working with me because she's like, okay, that's the thing. And then I've talked to her sometimes. I interrogate her. What do they really teach you in there? And of course they're not teaching them the history, because that's the first thing I would think. Like, what's the history of nutrition? You know, who are the founding fathers? Like, but they don't teach them that. They teach them the mathematics of that. Again, that's based on this
calorie counts.
Yeah, the calorie counts, and just it's based on kind of chemical isolationism.
Exactly.
Just breaking it down and analyzing it, and that can be fun if you're into the chemistry and that kind of thing. But that type of analysis does not really bode well when you're talking about how the body is actually functioning. The calorie theory, that's another one I talk about in Spira Speaks, where that comes from. Based on a guy named Atwater, and his, created this calorie meter. And so you mean to tell me you're gonna, if I put a piece of junk food and a piece of fruit, if it has the same calorie count, that means something. If I eat an apple and it has whatever, I don't know, somebody in here might know the actual calories of it. 30. And if there's a piece of junk food that maybe is 30, then in somebody's eyes they would say, oh well, this apple's 30. I could either eat the apple or I could eat this because I'm getting my calories. And you start to play these games, and so yeah, so that's where we are. But we don't just sort of ignore it like it's like, oh well, we're just not going to look at it at all. We say, well, just look at the history and then decide for yourself. Look at the origin of the theory, go back to those original books that the theories were based on, and then, see if it still makes sense after you read it.
That made us perfect.
Right, yeah. Yeah, the additive principle, that's it's a term and a concept that we use to refer to the belief system around the word nutrition. The belief system that we need certain things, we need this and we need that, right. And then, well, what if I don't eat that? Yeah. Like, what if I just don't? And then, yeah, but then somebody says, yeah, but you need it. I haven't ate that in 14 years. Like, when am I going to need it? Well, you will. Right, but that's the thing. We're kind of, and everybody in this room are pioneers. We are the pioneers of the new humanity. Think about, we do the work we're doing trying to clean ourselves up, and then we gotta have, if we have some children and put the children on the diet, and then they have children and they're on the diet, by that third generation of Mucusless diet practitioners and eaters, it's gonna be a totally different reality. A totally different family, a totally different blood. That blood will have cleaned itself up something profound. Things that we would struggle with, like eating fruit, nothing but fruit for periods of time, or fasting or something, that wouldn't even be a problem for the child of someone a couple generations down. You know, so we got to think a little bit further, because we want to get ourselves together, but we also want to get ourselves together so that we can be here for our children, and that we can, you know, kind of have that influence of the people around us. But yeah, stories from him. He said that, and his son's name is Hanif, and he said he started feeding Hanif solid foods pretty early. He was like 7 or 8 months or something, and he was already kind of giving, like, but it was like little fruit and little things like that. So as far as the young ones go, it's more of a grazing kind of just when they feel like it kind of thing, you know. So it still kind of maintains that, and then once they start getting a little bit older and they start kind of having meals, then that's when you would kind of start doing the 2 meal a day plan.
And enemas for children?
Yeah, he gave Hanif, like the baby, you know, the little bulb enema, the little baby enema. You'll clear them out, and that's the thing where you see a lot of children that are just so stopped up and all the mucus and all the stuff, and it's like, man, just give that baby an enema and get it off of that Similac or whatever that stuff is that I read the ingredients one time, and some of that, those formulas, and I couldn't believe what was in it, because I like, why would you give a child, you know, just the corn syrup and that kind of thing, and so you can make your own stuff out of whether you're dealing with, you know, coconut water and coconut, you know, the coconut milk, you do the coconut meat with the coconut water. Once they're a little older, you can kind of get into some different juices and stuff, and that's actually a topic I want to start. Is there's a number of women that practice a mucusless diet, but a lot of them aren't real public, and so one of the things I'm gonna try to do is kind of get some get some interviews and that kind of thing, get that education out there.
That's with my son. We're both raw.
Yeah.
But he wants breast milk. He doesn't want food really. So
yeah,
and almost 2.
And oh yeah.
But he drinks coconut water.
Okay.
He loves.
What's interesting about this, and we, like you said, we didn't talk a lot about fasting, but if you look at children, they naturally transition into solid food. And if you do a longer fast, you want to know how to transition kind of into fasting and then back out of fasting. So if you go for a period of time where you're on a liquid diet, you don't want to just sort of, I'm just going to eat anything to break it. You know, the fast is only as effective as how well you broke the fast. Right. So, and when you watch a child, they for however long they go, they're on liquids, so they're liquidarians basically, and then get to the point where they can start to deal with the solid food, but they can still do a lot of liquids, and so it's actually a gradual transition. And you can sort of apply that idea in your own fasting. As you break a fast, you kind of transition gracefully out of it. And I kind of learned how to do that. That's something that's a little bit more mine. Eric doesn't, he's very into the different ways that you break it, but the gradual out, kind of gradually breaking it out a longer fast, that's something that I kind of incorporated based on what I saw with my friend Brother Air. He had did an 8.5 month long liquid fast, fruit juice fast. Wow. I don't recommend that. Again, it's the disclaimer. He's like Michael Jordan of Mucusless diet healing system. So if you wouldn't expect to be able to dunk and do all the stuff Jordan does, don't expect to do what he's doing right now, because he's on that level. But when he broke that fast, he broke it with a piece of watermelon and he ate it. And he fell asleep in like 2 seconds. He was, wow. And he was like nodding and stuff. And I was like, and what happened after that? The energy around him just got so negative. It was crazy. It was really interesting. It was just bad vibes. And so now I thought to myself, I was like, man, I think he probably should have transitioned. Just in my head, like,
what should he have done?
Well, after that year, the next year, I did a 6 month long juice fast. And what I did to come off of it was I transitioned for really over 2 months. I went from where it was just totally liquid, and then I started incorporating. Maybe there's a little bit more pulp in there, and then I kind of went through a little smoothie phase where I actually was kind of doing smoothies and just making sure I was doing the enemas, kind of keep it moving. And then there was a period where the lines were blurred. It's like, were you eating solid food or you eating juice? Well, it's just the lines were blurred. And maybe then I would start doing stuff like get an orange and just suck on it. So maybe I wouldn't eat the whole orange, but I would suck all the juice out of it just with my mouth. And so you can't really, it's like this in-between kind of thing. So that was more of a personal experiment, that I did. That's not, the Mucusless diet. It's in Spira Speaks. I talk a little bit about that. For longer fast, that's more important. If you're just having a regular short-term fast, you still want to have the lengths of time. Like, you don't want to even do a 2 or 3 day fast and then break it. Even if you break it properly, if you're cleaner, you want to break it with fruit. If you're more of a beginner and you got more encumbrance, you want to break it with vegetables. But the vegetables have to be, like a salad. You really want a mucus-free meal, so you even want to avoid like the bread and that kind of stuff. Just a salad and maybe some steamed vegetables, but you really want to try to get to the point where you can break it with fruit,
right?
As soon as possible. But yeah, so that's a little bit.
But when you said he ate watermelon, that's what made me. And it sounded like that wasn't the right thing to do.
Yeah,
it made me curious.
Well, I mean, I wouldn't say it wasn't the right thing or right. I mean, it's what he did, and he's in that pioneering state because he had never done that before. He had never fasted that long. There's not a whole lot of people that have fasted that long, and so.
Okay, you weren't saying it was wrong.
Yeah, no, I wasn't saying it was wrong.
Okay.
I was saying what I observed.
Okay.
Like, maybe if I ever do a long fast, I'm gonna try to break it differently.
Green juice or something.